happens is when you do that work to understand where your thoughts are coming from, are they actually coming from 37-year-old Amanda, or are they coming from 6-year-old Amanda who had, a very different fear-based or performance-based system and value programming? Then you can start to get very clear on when something isn't aligned with your current version of yourself. Because if you don't do that work, sometimes you can't pinpoint why you're frustrated about something. And is it really you being frustrated or a past version of you being frustrated?
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, Acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing these crossroads, but too many times, the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on Acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. Howdy, folks. Welcome to yet another episode of the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. I'm so grateful for this guest today joining us and grateful to you guys, first of all, for tuning in, listening to us. We rant about a lot of things. It's not a mini episodes. All of my episodes are like an hour long, and I really appreciate your time and patience and attention that you give to us. But today I have one of my favorite creators joining the show. She's a marketing powerhouse, I would say. She's a founder. She's a truly inspirational figure who's continually challenging the current status quo. Without further ado, Amanda Goetz, welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm very caffeinated right now. So if I talk too fast, just like slow me down.
That's awesome. That's the energy I require. Shout out to Starbucks for giving you that energy.
Yeah.
For folks who don't know about Amanda, which is probably rare, but let me give you guys like an intro. Amanda is a 2x founder. She's a 3x CMO, and she's currently writing this awesome newsletter called Life's a Game, where she shares frameworks and tools to help you become more aware and present, how to handle anxiety, stress. It's pretty transparent, guys. You just have to read it, because once you get a hang of it, you won't go back. It's like she's talking to you, like you're in your living room wherever you read the newsletter. She's also a founder of House of Wise, a luxury CBD brand that empowers women to take control of their mental health, sleep, sex, stress, how to manage wealth, how to create wealth and whatnot. it's very empowering, and she's very vocal on her Twitter. So I did really spend a lot of time researching Amanda. I'm not bragging, but I have 2 pages worth of, I don't know if you can see, people were, it's like worth of questions, topics. So it's amazing. Amanda tweets a lot, which is amazing because I have more pointers to talk about. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. Right off the bat, I want to talk about your very recent announcement that you did on Twitter that you're leaving a full time job and becoming a full time creator. So, talk to me about it. And one thing I really appreciate about you is you are very transparent. Everything you go through, every decision you make, every feeling you have, every thought you kind of come up with, it's kind of like, you work in public with everybody. So it's not like silo, which is very amazing because I think not many people do that. So talk to me about the whole process of leaving VP of marketing at Teal and becoming a full-time writer, doing consulting and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. Like you said, I've been a founder twice now before. And my career has gone in these cycles where I started at a big company, then I went to a startup, then I
Right.
launched my own company, then I went to a big company, then I went launched my next startup, then
Mm,
I started doing fractional CMO work, then I went to
mm,
a big company again. And over the last year, I've been at a big company, and luckily my role was like kind of an innovation role. However, over the course of that time, I was working with my coach and really trying to figure out, what do I see for like the next chapter of my career, and
right.
what is lighting me up. And the same things that used to light me up don't light me up as much anymore. And
Mm,
I call it an energy audit. Like
mm,
figuring out the things that are giving you energy versus taking and draining your energy. And
right.
I just found that sitting in these meetings, not being able to produce as
Mm,
quickly as I wanted to, was draining me. And I was working at a big company that had still a lot of kind of older
sure.
systems, older way of thinking and approaching things. And I was feeling really, really drained by it. And so when I did this audit, the thing that actually gives me a ton of energy right now is writing. And I have almost a 20-year career. I have
Mm,
3 kids. I've navigated a lot in my life. I've gone through a divorce, fertility
mm,
treatments,
mm,
you name it. Done a
right.
lot of work, and I talk a lot about, therapy and coaching and what to get out of it. And so the act of using my experiences to connect with people and
Mm,
help people is the thing that just like, I would get up every morning excited to tweet and excited to, a lot of my interactions on Twitter then go to DMs where people are asking me questions about things, and that's where I get
right.
ideas for things to talk about and more things to share.
Right.
And so I had this moment where I realized that this is where I want to spend my time and energy. Now, let's call it what it is. It's very scary to step away
Mm-hmm.
from a stable paycheck. And
Yeah.
I grew up pretty poor. My parents, neither of my parents went to college. My dad's the town plumber,
Mm,
electrician. My mom was a stay-at-home mom.
mm,
And there's a lot of internal work I had to do in preparation for leaving that stable paycheck
right.
and saying, even though I was making money that like maybe people in my town or like even me growing up would never even think of making,
Right. Right.
and to kind of feel like I was just like, oh no, I'm not gonna appreciate or be grateful for this.
Mm,
I had to really do a lot of that work to say, this has nothing to do with not being grateful for that. It has everything to do with just seeking alignment for what I want in my life,
right.
and giving myself permission to be in that alignment. And then figuring out now, which is the work I'm doing now, which is like, where's my next paycheck coming from? Like,
True.
tweeting doesn't necessarily equal money.
Right.
And you have to really like do that work to figure out how
Right.
to take that path. So I have lots of thoughts on like, would I recommend doing it the way I did it?
Hmm.
No, but I
Sure.
also have had enough valid points or proof points along the way, validation moments to say, like, I have like a threshold of what I need to make every month to keep, the lights on.
Right.
And
Yep.
I see a very clear path to hit that number. And then everything else is going to get figured out. And I'm trusting the process.
I think basically people should be very real. They should not leave the ground, but at the same time they shouldn't stop themselves to aim for the sky. Like there is certain level of balance, that balance is something like that figuring out is almost all the energy should go to that balance. That's it. Like everything else is kind of like, doable, because some other human being did the same way, right? Like what many
Yep.
people didn't do is like, mentally like adjusting your uncomfortableness, going like, the things you did, like taking the
Yeah.
hard decisions.
It's like, are you operating out of a place of fear or a place of abundance?
Right.
And I have in my past operated out of a place of fear
Right.
where you make decisions because you're running away from something, not towards something.
Right.
And now this is like a very good moment in my life where I feel very convicted that I'm running towards something
Right.
that is like in that realm of abundance mindset. I believe that there is more for me to do and to make.
Right. I think, yeah, I read Wayne Dyer's book, The Power of Intention. And after reading that, before that, I have no idea of the concept of abundance. There is like,
Mm,
there's nothing that you can aim for. You dream about like having like big dreams, which is all fine, but abundance is really powerful, right? Like you already assume that you have everything. That gives you so much confidence,
yeah.
and world becomes more positive sum instead of zero sum. And
Yep.
that actually changes the whole perspective. But one thing, I have like so many follow-ups from that answer itself. Talk to me about the energy audit. What are the checks that you people should do? And the, the kind of like a sub question to that is, when do you actually feel like, hey, the thing I really started is exciting? Say for example, you joined TL, you were super excited to join, take up the opportunity, right? For example, there is a saturation point, like, hey, I'm not feeling it, like, that's the energy audit you're talking about. So A is, are there any checks? And B, when do you like see that, okay, this is where I should jump? Like for people who are also figuring out, moving, transitioning from one path to other path, any advice?
Yeah. So let's start with the energy audit. So when you look at let's start with your to do list.
Hmm.
You have a to do list of things you need to get done. Where you go first and where you want to jump into first usually gives you a signal of where you're excited.
Hmm.
Um, the second thing is look at your calendar and
Hmm.
where are you spending your time
Right.
and where do you want to be spending your time?
Hmm.
And if you look at your calendar and you feel dread
Hmm.
because of the work you're about to do, like for me, on a day where I have less meetings, I have writing time, I have
Hmm.
chats with people where I'm getting to connect with somebody new,
Hmm.
I am pumped. I have so much energy. I'm drinking my coffee. I feel good. If I'm sitting in meetings that are talking about, for me, like processes and getting someone on board and having to like convince somebody to do something,
Hmm.
I just like zapped all energy from my
Hmm.
body.
Right.
So that's the second thing. And then the third thing I would say is when you're in alignment, like I speak a lot about alignment, like you're very aware of like what is like how best to explain this. doing the internal work to understand why you gravitate towards things and why you make certain decisions. A lot of internal work is about making the subconscious conscious. We have a lot of programming in us that wasn't necessarily ours. It was given to us, whether it was given to
Right.
us by generations, like our passing down of our parents,
Sure.
grandparents, whatever, given to us by society, what we think we should be doing. So a lot of that programming. And when you do the work to really, I call it like reprogram yourself. My therapist talks a lot about this. She's like, you have an outdated software. You just need to upload a new software system.
Right.
And so, and I love her for that, because that's a really great framing for me
Sure.
to say, cool, this is just outdated software. I
Yep.
now have to do the work to install new software. And what happens is when you do that work to understand where your thoughts are coming from, are they actually coming from 37-year-old Amanda, or are they coming from 6-year-old Amanda who had, a very different fear-based or performance-based system and value programming? Then you can start to get very clear on when something isn't aligned with your current version of yourself. Because if you don't do that work, sometimes you can't pinpoint why you're frustrated about something. And is it really you being frustrated, or a past version of you being frustrated? So I think a lot of people jump to this, like, this isn't right, thus I need to change it. And you have to kind of sit in that this doesn't feel right moment and really understand why. Like, keep getting curious. Like, why doesn't it feel right? And it took me 6 months to step away from my 9 to 5, doing that work very actively.
Right. And the courage part, like, which is what I want to like really ask about, which is, it takes a lot of courage to let go something that you're already are very comfortable with, like, be it a job, be it being a relationship, whatever it is, right? Like, uh, where do people should find that courage? Is there a method that you practice over time? You had like a lot of hardships, a lot of lows. You explained that, be it divorce and in everything else, right? Where did you find that? Like, is there a focal point, like, hey, anytime I hit like some sort of low and I fell down, like, this is where I go immediately?
There's no trigger point for a lot of this stuff. I wish there was. I wrote about decision making and how kind of I have a framework that I definitely use and I go through when I'm making big decisions. But the things that I will say about decision making are, one, indecision is decision, right? You are choosing not to go down a path and you're choosing to sit in this limbo. And I think a lot of people paralyze themselves in that realm of indecision. And what I would really empower people to think, if they're sitting in this kind of purgatory phase of life right now, to really understand that there are no right or wrong decisions. There is the decision you make, and then all of your energy goes towards making that decision the right one for you. So whether I chose to stay in a relationship or leave it doesn't matter. It's the work that I did afterwards to say that was the right one for me. And so that's number one. Number two is making decisions out of an emotional
Right.
place is the worst way to make a decision. And so something as big as, leaving a job or getting a divorce, you'll hear the through line, which is, it took me 6 months to leave my job. It took me a year of doing the work to make sure that it wasn't out of an emotional place. And I remember like the first time I went to therapy was when I realized I wanted a divorce. And my therapist looked at me and she said, and I'm like bawling and I'm saying all this stuff. And I'm like, I want a divorce and I don't know what to do. And she looked at me and she said, when you can say that without crying, then we'll talk. And she's like, right now, let's just
Mm.
focus on like understanding why and asking yourself questions and getting you to a place that like, you feel more
Right.
stable ground. And I just think that's really interesting because whether you're deciding to end a
Mm.
friendship or to, end a situationship, which, I've also been dating for 6 years. Like I know what that's like. And it's almost harder than getting a divorce.
Mm.
But all of these things have to be made out of a place of like logic, not
Right.
emotion. And
Mm.
so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is like truly, truly understanding that there's a blast radius of every decision and trying to limit that, like understanding how your decision will affect your finances, the people in your life, your stress, your
Right.
stability, and weighing those
The
against one
reality.
another. Yeah. So there's a lot of things with decision making that it's not so black and white,
Mm.
but if you have the tools, you can go through this process. And then the last thing is, whenever I make a big decision, I commemorate it. I say like this happened. I usually write, it's a little woo woo, but I'll like write down all the things I'm releasing.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, career, like me getting off the corporate bandwagon, 25-year-old Amanda wanted to be the CMO of a Fortune 500 company.
Right.
I wanted to have a massive name next to
Of
my
course.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
status.
Right.
And I was on that path. Like the companies I kept being CMO of kept getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
And so I had to write a note to myself to say, I am releasing myself of that goal,
Right.
which comes with its own feelings, and
Mm.
saying, because I believe like this is my new path.
Mm.
And truly just like identifying the things that you will give up and you will mourn and you will say, you know, that that doesn't feel great, but I'm okay with it. I know that that's the trade-off I'm making.
Mm. I love the 4-step process you explained. And also, I think to add your point, when we make these big decisions, I think you should be surrounded by a support system. It can
Hmm.
be like for you, you said you have family, therapists. They are your cheerleaders, right? Like having yourself uh, kind of like a safety net in terms of people, or that really helps accelerate the decision making and makes you feel
Totally.
confident, right? Uh,
It
I
does. I
love that.
will just to add to that though, one thing I have noticed with friends, and I'll say this, and this is a huge proponent of why you should have an independent third party helping you assess things.
Mm.
Many friends are mirrors and they
Mm.
will mirror whatever. If you give the slightest inclination that you want to leave your job or you're unhappy or you're mad at this guy and you want to end the relationship, they will mirror that and they will give you
Mm.
every reason why you should do that and why they support you,
Right.
which is great. But you need someone who's less of a mirror and more of like a magnifying lens to actually help you identify and get closer to the why behind things. So
Mm.
I just say that as be cautious of
Okay.
who you're getting advice from. And the last thing I'll say is form your own opinions before you take others in,
Mm-hmm.
because processing with people can be a very, very dangerous thing to do when
Mm.
you haven't formulated your own kind of point
Yeah.
of view on something. So I'll say, like, even with my partner now, if something's bothering me or if I'm like something is stirring, I'll say, this isn't fully baked. Let
Hmm.
me go bake it and come
Mm.
back to you with something,
Right.
because it's not his job to be my therapist or to do that work. Like
Right.
that's on me. So
Right.
just a couple of cautionary things when
Yeah.
with your support system.
Yeah, you should definitely have a stance. If there is no
Yeah.
stance, then you'll become like mercury. You basically, people mold, you mold. People say this,
Yep.
you mold to that. So it's definitely not it probably works short term, but not a long term solution. Uh, let's go back a little bit and let's talk about. I think you did a lot, but I just want to highlight a couple of things in this podcast, mostly about previous work. uh talk to me about like House of Wise. So
Mhm.
it's not like it's not a SaaS, like a software company. It's not an agency like where you provide services. It's a D2C. It's very like trendy, very important, especially targeting empowering women. Why in the first place, like, talk to me about the foundational story of, House of Wise, and why like that route. What did you try anything else and then you finalize, okay, this is the path to go?
I always say that there's two types of founders in the world. There's people who are like, I'm just born to be a founder and I don't know or care what I'm going to build. I'm just going to be a founder.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people like me who, the first time I built a company, it's because I was in the industry for 8 years and I saw a pain point and I wanted to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Second time I built a company, it's because I was going through something and I saw a pain point and I wanted to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the origin story for House of Wise is that, I'm going through my divorce. I'm at the height of my career. I have 3 kids under the age of 4, and I'm
Mm.
juggling all of that. And I had never touched cannabis or really anything. The
Mm.
only socially acceptable thing in my mind was alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I started to realize that as the stress of my life was really kind of coming down on me,
Mm.
my anxiety was going through the roof. And the more I would like have that glass of wine at night, it would disrupt my sleep. My anxiety would be even worse the next day.
Mm.
And yet, when I would try different products, like this is when CBD was kind of still like you're learning about it. What is it? Does it get you high? Does it
Mm.
not? Um, there was just like a lot of products on the market that were geared towards somebody who already used cannabis,
Right.
or you had no clue what was in it and where it came from and was there any research behind it. So I saw this opportunity to empower women to make space for themselves in their day.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working on this a year before COVID. And I was just really toying with the idea. I had met with a ton of growers. I had met with a lot of labs who
Right.
were really studying cannabinoids and what they do and the different strains. And then COVID hit, and I saw all of my friends just drinking so much more alcohol than they'd ever drank and experiencing new depths of low. Um, and so that was the kick I needed to go raise a pre-seed round. Still
Mm.
had my day job. So I did this in nights and weekends,
Wow.
but get the formulations done and get the
Right.
packaging done and get the brand done and gear up to launch it. And I had a very unconventional path because I did not step away from my very big role
Right.
to be a full-time founder. I baby stepped it. I went from a full-time role to I raised the pre-seed round, kept that full-time role until it was getting closer to a public launch. And
Mm.
then I found a half-time CMO role at a
Mm.
startup. So then I went to 20 hours a week where I still had insurance and a paycheck and
Right.
launched House of Wise, kept that for 5 more months. And then we raised our big round, our $2 million
Mm.
seed. That then enabled me to go all in and give myself a paycheck and to, be fully focused. And I was just very upfront with everybody that supported me in that and all the founder or all the investors to say, if you want to see more representation in the founder world, you have to understand that there's going to be different paths. And
I like
if you
that.
want more, if you want more women, if you want more parents, if you want more, minorities, like not everybody has that same safety net. And
I like that
so
a
I
lot.
would say that. And I think people had these aha moments where they're like, yeah, this is that there is so much truth in that.
Right.
So at a very unconventional path. And then, we launched the company and I just sold it last summer.
Congrats. Yeah.
And
Big congrats on that.
thank you. It was the right thing for the company, the right thing for the brand,
Sure.
right thing in this given climate. Being
Right.
a CPG founder is difficult right now.
Right.
And so it was the best thing for everyone involved.
I love what you said previously about being very transparent. This is my situation. This is not traditional, typical, founder path you might encounter with everybody else, because one, you're clearly setting an expectation. And number two, whoever is in, that means that you're working with them as a team. There is
Yeah.
you're not loaning money from them. They really want you to succeed because they empathize with you, right? Like generally, that's the perfect founder investor fit. Like,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because there is no beating the bush. You show all the cards. This is how it is. If you want to come on board, right? I love, and I'm so happy for you, the way I love unconventional stories, because you have the command and grip. You are doing with conviction, right? You are the person on the upper hand. It's not you're taking someone else's hand. I love that. Have a couple of more follow-ups, but talk to me about, you're big on marketing. You're big on, let's talk about like some of the tactical stuff people really crave about. Uh, the brand strategy, the marketing strategy, especially building a D2C brand. Uh, and you advise a lot of startups, as you're also like an angel investor, right? So talk to me about current marketing uh, tone that people are adapting due to AI and whatnot. Brands being people is a big concept. So talk to me about that and how you incorporated in House of Wise, and how you advise founders to like do the same.
Say that a little bit. So how are brands incorporating AI, or kind of this idea of human elements versus like what's happening with AI?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
human elements with what's happening with AI, because there are like, they're divided right now. Brands picking their marketing strategies, literally using AI. Hey, come up with a brand strategy and executing it, which is not wrong. And there is this other set where really like people are putting their hearts out and kind of doing human work, right? And which I think you did for House of Five. So talk to me about the both sides.
Yeah. Well, the shift is happening like that. I truly see this like when you look on Twitter, the rise of gurus and templates and
Hmm.
how I built X in this many days and how I did this much money and these steps and you can too.
Hmm.
Like there's all of this like kind of rise in the creator economy,
Hmm.
which my friend Kate, she uses this term hope vultures.
Hmm.
And I love that because it's truly what it is. It's people kind of really being predatory on people wanting to make money. They want to figure out how to grow fast. They want to do it really quickly. So with this rise of all of this content being put out there, I think we're going to see the the kind of counterbalance with every pendulum swing. We always have the reverse happen. You see it over decades. When we go super far one way, we will try to course correct the other way. And right now, yes, AI is being used to generate a lot of stuff, which I think is also causing our human brains to now have this like immediate lens of distrust. And we are seeking connection.
Hmm.
You can tell, like, I I've used ChatGPT to try to generate content, and unfortunately, it isn't my voice. And you can train it to be somewhat more, but you always will have to, like, ChatGPT does not know what happened in my divorce or what happened to this morning with my kids. It cannot infuse the personal narratives, which are actually what's connecting people. Like,
Right.
the reason Nike is so good at marketing is because they hit an emotional level that you cannot generate from AI. Now, what is AI great for? Right now, systems and like getting things done very quickly. And I'm still learning, but there's like
Sure.
AI solopreneur that I'm obsessed with, that newsletter because he breaks everything down really tangibly. There are so many things you can use it for to go faster.
Right.
But we as a society, post COVID, crave human connection more than ever. And as a marketer, I advise brands to tap into that first and foremost. Like, people aren't going to be as pumped that you have something done with AI as they are. When we saw this with NFTs and Web3,
Yeah.
we saw this massive wave of like, everything's going to be on the blockchain. Everything has to be decentralized. People want to own their data.
Right.
People are struggling to get by right now. Like, we build for this like 1% community, and people forget that, like, I'm from middle America. Like, there are so many people who
Right.
aren't thinking about AI. They're
Right.
not thinking about NFTs. They're not thinking about the blockchain. They're thinking about, how am I going to make my car payment? How am I going to give my kids braces? So as a marketer, there's a phrase, does it play in Peoria? If it plays in Peoria, you can Google it. It's a very well-known advertising phrase. I'm from Peoria, Illinois. And they say that phrase because like it's the most like representative of central, the middle of America. And if it plays there, then that means like it will be mass wide adopted. And I just think that we who eat, sleep, breathe tech and startups, and we're on Twitter, you have to remember we are a very small percentage of the population. And will people get ahead and use AI and leapfrog people? Yes, just like some people did with crypto. There are many crypto billionaires and millionaires that were made during that bubble, that 2017.
That wave.
But that is such a small percentage, and you cannot build and shift your entire marketing strategy around a 1%.
Right. And that's what I think a lot of people should focus on, like founders especially, majority not minority. And in your opinion, if you were to like give some pointers, how do you want to attack the majority, especially from a content standpoint, brand messaging, generally overall as a brand? Do you have anything that you've learned from House of Wise, like these are the things people should actually pay attention to, like be it like human emotion is definitely one. I want to explore like any other elements that you discovered building that very very human brand.
Yeah. Well, it all starts with your why and like your mission and your purpose. I think a lot of people try to pin the tail on the donkey, like purpose, after they've already launched. They start with a product and they say, this is the product. Now, how do I get people to buy this product? And it's like, no, you're not selling a product. You're selling an emotion, a connection, a way of life,
Right.
A feeling. And as a marketer, I always start with that kind of non-product piece. Like, I always start with a brand pyramid, and I start, yes, you're going to have features and products, but like then you move up the pyramid and you say, okay, what emotional attributes are you giving somebody, and then what like lifestyle are you giving somebody, all the way up to like what is truly the reason for your being. How are you making someone's life better or different? And so I always start there and then work into the messaging of, okay, now how does that come to life? Like it was super with House of Wise, we wanted the top of our pyramid, the essence was helping women make space and take up space. So it was around permission. And so everything that we did, now that we have this, like, why do we exist? Well, when she pops a sex gummy, she's now giving herself permission to experience pleasure. If she pops a strength gummy, she's now said to herself, I deserve to go get a workout in today.
Right.
So yes, it's a product, but it has so much more of this. Sorry, the sun is going in and out, so you can see it's like over here. But so we've now given her permission, and now we say, well, what brands would we partner with, or what content strategy, or what influencers are we going to work with that align with that mission? And everything stems from that. What podcasts am I going to speak on? Will that person help talk about this? Do they align with this? So yeah, everything has to stem from that. Why do you exist?
I love that. I think quoting Simon Sinek, he always say that start with why, and don't sell the product, sell an emotion. Like he examples Apple, Nike. Apple sells
Exactly.
creativity.
It's very marketing 101,
Yeah,
right?
it's like basic.
We're not selling a product.
And anything that you're recently discovered by just being a consumer, not a creator or a founder, like wow, like just the way Simon Sinek's 101 is somewhere else, that you were like, okay, wow, this is really fascinating.
I've been so heads down. I actually need to think about what have I bought lately that's not a kid's toy. I mean, honestly,
I love that answer.
I know. I'm
All
like,
we
what am I? So the brands that I spend more of my money on. Well, okay, let's talk about two. Shopify, for example. Like as a founder and a small business owner, when I think about who is truly empowering small businesses, like Shopify comes to mind. And they care so deeply. Like Harley, he's very active on Twitter. Like I was a small brand compared to what they have on Shopify. And one time I tweeted out like I was struggling with something. He immediately responded and connected me with someone, like just people who genuinely care. And to me, their mission of, empowering small business owners, the fact that he took the time, or I'm pretty sure it was him, unless it was his assistant, but like the fact that whoever operates his account, he took the time to monitor to see if anybody had questions. So that truly means that he's connected to the small business owner.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, Legos. I am like the Lego world. I spend so much money on Legos, but I recently, this is kind of tangential, but I bought a non-Lego Lego set, you know what I mean? Like it was like the
like a different
bootleg
brand.
Legos. I was like, all right, Legos are pretty expensive. I'm gonna buy my son the Pikachu. That is not Lego, but they click together.
Right.
We threw it away after like 20 minutes because it was so frustrating. The even just the way the instructions are done with Legos is so easy to follow. And if you've ever like paid it, I do a lot of Lego building, like they'll make something a different color, not because it needs to be, but just to make it easier for you to know where it needs to go, even if it's going to be hidden underneath other Legos. They are so thoughtful in how they do it. And I think like Lego has the opportunity to really come back and say like, this is a mental health thing. I would love to be CMO of Lego to like help say like every adult like the only way I can like get this thing off out of my hand half the time
Yeah,
is to sit down and do Legos and make my hands busy.
right.
So those are two that like come to mind. But I'm sure I'll think of more.
Yeah, for sure. I think probably that might give you more ideas to tweet. Uh, I think
Yeah.
Legos are really amazing because they bring the creator out of you. Everybody who uses Legos are creators because they're creating something out of nowhere from a building blocks, right? I love that. Uh, I know we've talked about like couple of you've done many podcasts and you've given so many advice on marketing, and so that's why I'm not talking about those. But I really want to ask this now that you are in the third phase of your life, which is one, you were an operator before, a startup operator. Two, you were a founder, two-time founder. Three, now you're entering into the creator economy, creator persona, right? Talk to me about like maybe like one, two lessons from each persona that you universally
Mhm.
apply for everything. Like as a creator, what are you applying as of from the founder experience, from an operator
Yeah,
and whatnot? And what do you like the most? That's one thing.
great question. Let me start with, okay, so when I worked as an operator, worked at big companies, I'll say the thing that's like been a through line now through everything I've done is no one's looking out for your career except you.
Mm,
Like truly. And you have to be your biggest advocate. You have to hold your own spotlight over you
mm,
because at a big company, I learned very quickly that the more I managed up, the faster my career went up.
mm,
And so you can work your tail off, but your boss sees 10% of that,
right,
if depending on what your boss
right,
oversees. So making it very clear what you're doing. And then that led to being a founder and building in public and sharing stuff
right,
because no one knows what you're doing
sure,
if you don't advocate for yourself.
right,
You may think that Forbes article, everyone's going to see it.
yeah,
No, like you have to put it out
yeah,
there. So that's, I would say, the thing I learned from that. From founder world. So the mistake I made with my first company that I tried to kind of rectify my second is I rode the highs too high and the lows too low. And the you know, point A to point B in my first company, that was such a drop
mm,
or extreme climb. My second company, I just stayed pretty neutral. Cool. Kardashians all talked about us and posted us online. Cool.
mm,
Oh, we might run out of money in a month. Cool.
yeah,
Like you just have to stay in this middle ground.
mm,
And as a creator, it's like moving into this world of like a lot more unknowns.
right,
I
uncertainty,
have to just stay like right here because the
right,
more you allow yourself to spiral down, it doesn't help anything. And you'll start to just like be like, oh, I gotta take this, I gotta take this. And all of a sudden your calendar's full and you can't actually work on the thing that you want to do that's your long-term success.
mm,
So I would say that's the thing that I've learned being a founder. And now as a creator, I think the thing that I appreciate more than ever is the the role of like hard work but autonomy.
mm. The
Like
freedom,
every time I go back to the like I'm my own boss. I am in charge. No one's looking out for what I'm doing. Like that's when I work the hardest.
mm,
And I find that even though I'm in charge of my own calendar, it's the hardest season for me to make space for myself
sure,
and my relationships and my
yeah,
kids because I feel this like pressure to that like, well, no one else is looking out for this. Like I have to move it
right,
forward. And so the thing that as like going into content creator world is like trusting the need for rest and breaks
right,
and knowing that that's equally as important.
right. I think all three personas, you're basically doing stuff, right? Like you're progressing. And I
Mhm.
love the common theme in all three personas. What do you like the most now that you experienced all three? Like, hey, this is really amazing, fascinating. I
It's like picking a favorite child here.
I know I
Um,
kind of know the answer, but
well, here's the thing. They've all supported one another. And this is why my career has been big companies, startup, big companies, startup. What I learned working for Mike Stipe, who's now CEO at Artsy, but came from Google, was the
mhm,
CEO of The Knot. What I learned from that executive team, and Jillian Munson, who was our CFO, went on to be CFO of Duolingo
mhm,
and
mhm,
all like massive companies. I learned operational excellence at a
mm,
level that I would have never learned staying in the startup world. Most people who are startup founders have never been at a big company.
sure,
They are
right,
founders.
yeah. They start
And
small,
so they start small, they just start building,
right,
which is great. But I managed a team of 50 people. I had to learn how to communicate a vision
right,
and a strategy, provide clear lanes for everyone so that people could go do their work, be autonomous, understand how it ladders up to a bigger vision.
right,
But also, I learned in those roles like influencing without authority. Like I wanted to move mountains in that company. I needed product, I needed engineering, I needed legal, all to be on board with some of the things I wanted to do.
mm,
So the role of influencing without authority, like I didn't dictate what their roadmap was, but I had to figure out how I could.
right,
And so I have just such a love for what I learned in that like 5 to 6 years of my career that I couldn't have built House of Wise as quickly
mm,
as I did. And with women who we had a lot of just like fractional employees who were like moms, they had quit their jobs and they were just like doing something on the side. But being able to manage a lot of fractional employees, I had that skill set from, and then House of Wise opened up so many doors for me to build in public and to figure out what my voice was online. And so now it's like I get to now take all of that
mm,
into this next chapter.
right.
So that's why it's hard for me to
So
say
the
which one's my favorite because if I said now, I
right,
love what I'm doing now,
yeah.
but I couldn't have done it without these
I think
experiences.
everything compounds, right? Everything adds to the next thing we do. So let's talk about Life's a Game. I'm hoping that you didn't reveal all the secrets to other shows. So hopefully this is like a platform for people like how you write and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's an anti-hustle newsletter. It talks about really like reminds me mostly about how to be present, how to actually play with my kid, 2 year old toddler. I have a 2 year old toddler. Be present with him, enjoy the time, as well as of course like mentally how can I challenge myself to up my game. Talk to
Yep.
me about the purpose. How did you end up picking this versus you could have started like a newsletter around building a you know D2C company or D2C because it's so tactical, everybody would have craved for it. Why the intangible, why the meta, and why now?
Yeah. Um, so many people told me not to go broad.
Right.
They're like, "You're a marketer. Write about marketing."
Right.
And going broad is the slowest way to grow and to achieve any form of monetization.
Right.
There's a phrase, the riches are in the
Mm-hmm,
niches,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? So staying niche,
Right.
um, where you can make a lot of money, you're known for a singular thing. I, again, just wanted, before I started the newsletter, I did an exercise where I wrote down, I think it was probably like 80 subject lines. I was
Wow.
just like, what? It was like a brain dump. I was like, of all the things I want to write about, marketing, not marketing, right? as many subject lines as I could possibly think of.
Mm.
Then I categorized all of them. And what happened was marketing wasn't really in there. Yes, I can talk about how to build a brand. Yes, I can talk about how to figure out your channel strategy, your go-to-market strategy, how to build a campaign, how to build community. That wasn't what came out in that exercise.
That is
It
so
was,
fascinating, because by nature it's like kind of like it's you, right? Like that's how people imagine you whenever they go to your profile or your content. We resonate you as like, okay, she's one of the best marketers. But why? How did that? Did that like shock you, or like
yeah, for sure it did. Because I was like, I was teaching master classes on brand strategy, and
right?
that's how I was making money. But the thing that I care so deeply about
Hmm.
is the thing you just said, which is I'm helping you find permission and time to be with your kid.
Hmm.
And so many people, like, this is the number one regret on people's deathbeds, is
Hmm.
that I wish I didn't work so much. I wish I was with my family more.
Yeah.
And the fact that we know this, we as a society are still pushing narratives around how to do more, be more, go further, go faster. And no, there aren't as many people saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You
Hmm.
can totally achieve success, and you're going to because you have that drive. But how about it's an and? You
Hmm.
can be successful and have a healthy
Not
marriage
an or.
and see your kid. And how do you do that? And no one's really giving the how. And again, it's because it's not very easily monetizable.
Right.
Like, who, it's so easy. A B2B SaaS platforms, like, I want to reach
Yeah.
marketers. Great. You have a marketing newsletter. I will sponsor
Yeah.
it. But I did an exercise of like, what is the means to the end here?
Mhm.
Like, what am I actually doing in this next season of life? And for me, it's about intentionality and
Hmm.
helping people not have the same mistakes I've watched so many people make over and over again.
Hmm.
So that's what gets me up in the morning, and that's what I write about. And as a marketer, when I think about how you're going to be differentiated in a space, there's so many people building marketing newsletters and how to be a great marketer, or whatever, how to build a personal brand. I think my intersection, or what makes me different, is it's still marketing.
Hmm.
Like, I'm still teaching you how to show up authentically online. Like, today's newsletter was truly about like
Hmm.
this, like, what to talk about online if you want to take up space online. How do you figure out what that is?
Hmm.
And and my unique take on that is that you can't strip yourself of your personal characteristics. That
Right.
actually is what gives you your like secret sauce of whatever niche you're picking.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I went broad, and it got me a book. I signed with a book agent, and now I'm going down this path of writing a book, which I'm super, super pumped about. Literally, you can see all of my post-it notes
Yeah,
on my
yeah, yeah.
bed
I can
behind
see
me.
that. I thought it was a blanket, but I now see
I know.
that.
I wonder what people are gonna think when they see like pink and yellow. No, that is literally the outline of my book.
Awesome.
And um that's what lights me up. And that's, if I can help someone say this internal battle that I have between knowing I'm meant for some really cool shit in this life,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to do that at the expense of getting the other things out of life
Right.
that I know I also want.
Right.
If I can help somebody find that path of how to do that,
Right.
then I am completely satiated.
It's so meta. Just want to acknowledge that your why is reminding other people's why.
Yeah.
That's what I feel about your newsletter, right? Like, and now that I talk to you, I feel like you're so passionate about like bringing these frameworks, bringing these solutions to us, which reminds like, oh, you know what, why the heck am I even working 50 hours,
Right.
60 hours, right, when I can really like, manage, balance my time. So the niche uh, strategy for niche is always very clear. Basically, the in and outs, and mostly it's how to guides, mostly it's like tactical stuff that moves the needle.
Yeah.
And content creation there can be accelerated because it's all like tactical, right?
Mhm.
When it is a broad subject, how do you manage like going from point A to point B and putting actually a stop there, like, hey, this is where I put a stop, because it can be like anything. So the brief is do everything. How do you
Yeah.
come up to
We'll find out when I mean, we're 3 months old, 10,000 subscribers, and I've talked about decision making, burnout, self talk, and like the science behind it.
Mhm.
Like, we've jumped all over, but it all stays in this Venn diagram of personal and professional growth, you know? And I think you're right. Like, if I created this Venn diagram, personal growth, professional growth, and in the middle, it's your why.
Right.
I love that. That to me, as long as something is staying within those two bubbles
Mm.
and leads somebody to that middle ground, it's game on.
Mm. And talk to me about the process. I'm just very curious about how do you go about writing next week's newsletter? Where do you start? Like,
So I'm launching an office hours in October.
yeah,
And so I'm going to take people like truly behind the scenes. I'm going to do
love
like
that.
a lot of Loom videos and show people like I sit down on a Saturday morning. So Saturday morning is what I call ideation station. I
I
sit
love that.
down
Mm-hmm.
and I have a document that's called ideation station that whenever a thought comes into my head, I throw it into that.
Mm.
And then what tends to happen is I start writing probably 3 to 4 newsletters. I will start writing like a skeleton.
Mm.
And one of those will really grab me and I'll start to research. Like, I love including like science and any studies that have been done around the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start researching, and once I start to like really get going on one, like I'll start one and then I'm like, I kind of want to talk about this now, or one will spark another one.
Mm.
And so by Saturday's time period, I have now selected a topic, and then I go into Sunday and I write it. Monday I edit it because I am verbose, as
Mm-hmm.
many can hear. So I have to cut it down by like 400 words.
Wow.
Then I program it on Tuesday, and then Wednesday is when, I create the like social content
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
around it. And yeah, so that's kind of the
I love
process.
it. I love it. Thanks for the detailed explanation. Two more questions on the same lines. It's more of like a question personally to you. Were you ever be or at a stage where you felt like, you know what, man, this is really scary. What I'm about to do is absolutely, it's going to,
Yeah.
it's very scary. It ties to my livelihood, ties to my everything, right? Like societal wise. How do you overcome that fear or that phase and like, okay, now I'm becoming more confident?
There's this optimal growth chart that I always have in my head, and I put it in last week's newsletter. But this idea that no stress, you're not going to push yourself to grow. Too much stress, you're not going to push yourself to grow.
Mm.
It's about finding this like middle area where there's the right amount of stress that kind of pushes you into your next mountain, your next stratosphere of your career
Mm.
and your life. I've done enough scary things that
I
this
like
is a
that.
well-trained muscle.
Right.
I know this feeling now, this feeling of, holy shit, what am I doing?
Right.
I've
Yes.
experienced this a few times. And when you experience it a few times, you say, oh no, this is great.
Yeah.
Because whatever happens, like I have launched a company that didn't
Mm,
succeed. And what happened? Oh, it opened a massive door for me to take on a role that I was way too young
mm,
for in, in
mhm,
certain views. And so I was like, okay, that launched me to this next level. And oh, divorce, that put me into this whole new level of growth and introspection and figuring out why
mm,
I did certain things and why I thought certain things and why I chose certain things. So every single scary thing that has happened in my life led to a new level.
mm,
And so now, yes, I'm scared, but I also know I've been here before and I always know that it will push me into something. I don't the fear is in the unknown,
mm,
and we as humans, like our brains are literally like from a primal standpoint wired to look for stability and safety
mm.
and comfort. And like that feels not comfortable, that feels scary.
Yeah.
No, why would we do that? That's we got to stay
Right.
safe. You're literally going against your primal
Mm,
instincts to do something
mm,
scary. And you have to acknowledge that and say, okay, I'm going against what my body and my brain wants me to do.
mm,
However, I trust that this is going to be a cool opportunity for me. And I trust that. So for me, the best thing I do in these situations is I time box it.
mm,
I am giving myself 1 year. I have a
mm.
year of savings that I've basically set aside to say I can keep the lights
Right.
on for a year, even if I don't make what I'm hitting my threshold. I have a year to see what
Right.
happens.
You have to give
And
yourself an
then,
opportunity, a chance to try it out.
yeah, try it out. And then year from now, we may talk again in a
Yeah,
year and I'm back being a CMO of a startup and
that's
that's
fine
fine
too. Yeah.
too. So cool. Let's see what
I
happens.
love that attitude because I think that's a healthy attitude. Trying is more important than winning, right? When we try to win,
Yeah.
you're playing a different ball game. You're not ready for being uncomfortable. You're not ready for uncertainty because you're aiming to actually win. That's the loop that you want
Yep.
to close. On the other side, when you're just trying, giving yourself, setting an expectation, low expectation in this case, and time boxing, I love that too. It's not permanent. That gives me, I think, when I'm hearing what you said, I do like a lot of side projects. I have my 9 to 5 job, but I want to become a full-time founder eventually. That's the thing I'm trying to achieve. And like you said, when you time box, okay, 2023, I'm going to launch 2 projects. With me being, I have a 2-year-old toddler with a full, it's all difficult, right? I think that is
Yeah.
really a right attitude to make progress too. I love that. Thanks for sharing. One other thing on the other side, how do Amanda gets creative? What stimulates you to be creative in terms of getting these ideas, what you write about? And have you ever thought about, what, my gas is done, the tank is out? Uh,
Mm.
how do you actually overcome that too?
So I'll share one story from my childhood. So I grew up on a farm and the middle of nowhere, like
Mm,
literally closest neighbors miles away.
wow.
And I'm 7-ish years younger than my brother.
Mm,
So basically I was an only
mm.
child.
Yeah, yeah.
I was alone a lot. And my parents had this mentality of like, go play. We don't like go figure it out. And when you're hungry, you can come back to
The
us.
essentials.
Their generation didn't sit down the floor and play with
Yeah, yeah.
us. So I had a massive imagination. I played the most intricate games
Mm,
of setting up. like a restaurant downstairs. I had a golf cart, so I would go run errands, and then I'd have to go to work, and I'd like drop my American girls off at the daycare. And I was like constantly making up all of
Mm.
these games. So I do think that boredom as a child led to creativity as an adult, and a muscle that I can I think we were chatting before we started recording. The like it's scary what is happening
Mm-hmm,
up
mm-hmm.
here at all. I'm constantly making jokes to myself, like puns, play on words. Like, come if I'm watching a commercial, I'm thinking of 5 different ways I would have done it differently. Like my brain is just constantly doing that. As an adult, I have to recognize that the thing that gave me that creativity was space.
Mm.
And we wake up every day, we grab this, we start filling our brain before it has the ability to think. And so I'm very structured on how much I put into my brain at any given day,
Mm.
to allow myself the space. I go on long walks without music so that my brain can just go
Mm.
and see where it goes. I go for runs, and just realizing that if you want to think of something, you have to allow your brain to stop taking in so many inputs so it
Right,
can do its own work.
right. It's funny that you mentioned about long walks. Yesterday, I interviewed Matthew Kovac. He literally said the same
Oh,
thing.
I love him.
He literally said the same thing. We were talking about like creativity for brands, and he's working at Slice, phenomenal company,
Yeah,
trying like different things. He literally said the same thing. He said, "No
yeah,
phone, long walks, preferably a run, get back. You're pumped with your gas is so full, it's actually overflowing.
yeah,
Now you just dump
yeah,
it." Uh, that's two people saying the same thing. That means it's a sign for me to like pick it up, and for listeners, go for long
yeah,
walks. Couple of more
yeah.
questions, and we can wrap it up. I want to talk about you, Amanda, as a mom, right? Which is, I think,
Mhm.
very important. Out of all the things you talked about, I personally feel the founder life, the operator life, the creator life, nothing can beat the mother life, the parent life.
Mhm.
What kind of what kind of routine that you have with your kids that actually helps you fulfill the other three roles, or for now it's the creator role?
So if my kids were here, they'd probably, if you ask them, like, what's mommy like? Like, I am the goofy one. Like, I love to make them laugh and to bring like fun into the house. So we are always blasting music, dancing. Like, home is a fun place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is my outlet for play,
Mm.
because I talk a little, like I was writing about this morning for the book, but we have all of these roles that we play, and we'd be lying to ourselves if we were thinking that the same personality traits would lead in every role.
Mm.
But that's not to say that we don't have all of these personality
Mm.
traits. Like, you can be playful and goofy and funny, but you may choose not to lead with those personality traits in your work
Mm.
life because your work demands you to be assertive and aggressive, or in very in control and in command.
Mm.
And the thing that I love about all of these roles and how they're complementary, and what me being a mom is it allows me to bring out those other parts of my personality with my
Mm.
children. And they see, like, they were home with me during COVID when I started House of Wise.
Mm.
So they see um what it took and how stressful it was and how intense it
Mm-hmm.
was. I talk about this a lot. This is a very well-known Amanda-ism, but I have this thing called the commute bath.
Mm.
And it's this joke where it started during COVID, where my kids would see me being stressed and on all day, like, packages need to go out. I need to do these calls. I need to figure out investor stuff. Like, I was like very on it.
Mm.
And then I'd go take a bath, and we called it like, I'm going to go take my mommy
Mm.
bath, and I would go turn into a mommy.
Mm.
Basically, that was my time where I could transition and soften
Mm.
and be playful.
Mm.
And so when I would come out, that was when I would be goofy and transition
Playful.
into that. But like, it was hard for me.
Mm.
And that, I think, acknowledging that we can have all these facets of our personality, and each role that we play demands different parts of
Right.
it. And my kids are a great reminder of like the need to play and to be
Right.
focused. And I think that role complements, it allows me to then go into other things, because as an adult, figuring out play is so hard.
Mm.
We it just feels serious all the time. We
Yeah.
have bills to pay. I gotta change the car
Right.
tag,
Yeah.
like all the things. And so figuring out how to be so insanely present building a pillow fort
Right.
is like a real skill set.
No, I think absolutely what you said is true. Adults, we live in, like you said, quote you before, we live always in the place of fear. Always. Something which you're catching up something, you're chasing something. Kids, they're blank white slates. They don't give a shit about your bills. They don't have bills. They only care about,
So
they're a place where they completely come from play. Like, joy, that awe, that wonder, like everything is a surprise for them, right? That's what I learned from my 2-year-old. He's he like, he teaches me how to be fascinated by uh I don't know, like a regular.
a bump.
Exactly, like go out,
Yeah.
dad, that's awesome. Like he gives that expression where like that's refreshing. Itself is so refreshing. I think that.
Childlike wonder is like such, like, you just want to bottle it up and give it to
Right,
everyone,
that's a product,
to be
that's a
like,
D2C product.
oh, yeah, childlike wonder. There is a fly on the, let's all stop.
One more question. I think this is more asking for myself. You have 3 kids, and I have one, and I sometimes uh, get into this trap. I know it's a trap. I come out of it, but I get into it so deep that, am I being a good dad? Am
Mm.
I being uh, like, am I doing the justice for this little guy that came from nowhere? I introduced him to this world. Have you ever thought about, you have 3, like, what do they become in the future? How are you actually fulfilling the mom role with them? And you do a lot of shit. It's not like you're staying home. How do you overcome that?
So let me tell you this. The sheer act that you're asking that question puts you in the 1% of parents. You care.
Mm.
Like, that is the foundation for what is a good parent. You care that you're a good parent.
Mm.
And so, yes, like, you are an amazing dad because you're thinking about, am I doing this well?
Mm.
So many people go through life and they don't think about, like, am I being a good partner? Like,
Mm.
things are just like a check the box activity
Right.
for some people. Like,
Right.
oh yeah, had kids, got a partner.
Right.
And the fact that you're even asking that question means that you are. And then the thing that I remind myself is, I'm the best parent I can be
Mm.
for them.
Mm.
Like, they are my children. Whatever happens in their life, like, I'm doing the best I can for them, and I'm there, I'm showing up.
Mm.
We all end up needing therapy, whether your parents were over loving
Mm.
or under loving. I always joke that it all boils down to a one sentence childhood. When you go to college and you meet somebody and they're like, "What was your childhood like?" Or if they say like, "Where are you from?" or whatever,
Right.
what's your story?
Right.
You say like a sentence. You say, you know, grew up in a small town,
Yep.
it's kind of alone a lot, but I became
Mm-hmm.
really good at sports, and yeah, that's kind of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
My kids will probably say, we moved around a lot because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Parents got divorced really young.
Mm.
And, you know, I have two founders as parents, so maybe they
Mm,
worked. But like at the end of the day, like it will boil down to a few sentences.
mm,
So I say that as like almost permission to like not obsess over it, because
mm.
like they're going to need, as long as you give them the tools and the toolkit to figure things
Right.
out,
And the
they'll
resources.
like, yeah, like that's it. And you're like, think about how much you're learning by doing this
Yeah,
podcast, that you're going to now, you're learning, you're talking to all these different people. You're going to be able to give them tools.
absolutely.
Like you're a curious person that enables you to like fill up your toolkit to pass to your kids. So many people are not
Mm,
doing that work and being curious about, hey, is there a way to say this to my kid that, and thankfully I have a therapist. So whenever I encounter something with my kids where I'm like I'm now entering into like preteen world,
mm.
and it's psychological warfare. Like it's
Right.
so physical in the early
Yeah.
days, and now it's
Right.
psychological.
It's all
I'm like,
mental.
she's giving me
Right.
attitude. What do I
Right.
do?
Right.
Um, but like having your own tools and resources makes you a great parent. So I would just like, I just wanted to like give you that
Yeah.
reassurance.
I sometimes go into this limbo, and of course my wife is more like you. She's like, it is what it is, man. You can't really go in the future and change things. At the same time, you go back and like change your own childhood. Because so one of the fears I have is, I'm an introvert, and my biggest fear is maybe my little kid is going to be like me. I should not. I would put him in a position where he is not like me, that has more friends, more like charisma and all that, where again, that's like society talking right now. But
Yeah, well, you're projecting what you want onto him, which that's basically dictating his wants and desires for him. And like, look, he may grow up and be like loving being on his own, and that could give him a superpower. So the crazy thing is you're an introvert, but you do a podcast, which I think is awesome, because that shows me that like you're like pushing
yeah,
against that too.
COVID really, that the last 4 years really pushed me. But I think, yeah, to your point, I think it is what it is. She reminds me, like, if he turns out to be you, she asked me, like, are you doing good, or are you in a jail? You turned out good, right? So he'll figure it out. So I think that kind of reassurance, and thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that kind words. It kind of like you and the other Amanda Natvidat, who said the same thing.
Love her.
Love her.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, you are living in the future when you actually should be living and enjoying the present with your, awe and wonder kid, right? So appreciate you guys for reassuring,
Yeah.
we're on the right track.
I always joke whenever I hear like one of my friends like get really hard on themselves, I'll say, "That's my friend you're talking about." And like your wife being like, "You don't want him to turn out like you. Like, I love you. I fell in love with
Yeah.
you. Like, what are you saying about
Right.
me?" And like, so there you have to reframe it of like lots of people love
Hmm.
you, and your son turning out like you is a great thing, because
So,
that's
right.
so I would just,
Uh,
yeah, that's interesting thought process. My kids, I have with three, it's so fascinating to me how each one's personality is so drastically different.
hmm,
And they all were born within 3.5 years of each
love
other.
that. Hmm.
They're so different. So it's like you can't control it. They're going to be how they're going to be. I have tried, my middle is so good, like she's so different and so complex, and like figuring her out is like a jigsaw puzzle, and I'm so excited.
Right.
And then she holds everything close to her chest, whereas my other two wear their hearts on their sleeves, and
Hmm.
they tell you what they're feeling. And it's just so cool that each kid is different. So maybe this is freeing to you, that like you kind of can't control it.
Yeah.
He's going to be whoever he's going to
Yeah.
be.
Absolutely true. But yeah, I think that can be a topic for your newsletter, because a lot of parents like me, I expressed because that concerned me, but probably like, not many people need
Yeah,
that, right? I think coming from
I'll
you,
shout you out.
yeah, I think coming from you would be a perfect uh, sense. But Amanda, thank you so much. I'm so grateful we had this conversation. So reassuring. I found my why again. I read your tweets, your newsletter, and day in day out, week over week, you remind me of my why. This conversation actually reminded me why my why again, and I hope people get the same vibe from it, and I'm sure that they will. Uh, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, this is wonderful. I appreciate you so much and so excited that you're doing this and giving people an opportunity to share what they're doing. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's it, folks. Like, again, try. Don't try to win. Just try. Have a positive life. Have a present life. I think that's the most important thing you can do. And do definitely subscribe to Amanda's newsletter, Life's a Game. We're going to put all the links in the show notes. Stay tuned. We have more amazing guests like Amanda coming to the show. And appreciate your attention for now. Cheers.